Hello, this is Iyabo Present Pilgrimage.
And it's Jennifer. Welcome back.
Welcome back. Jennifer, we're going to talk this time about the monster of difference. And, you know, these days, in the American context, it has a lot to do with race. Mm-hmm. As an immigrant, I always feel the immigrant aspect, the difference in my name, my culture. For others, it may be their gender fluidity identification or sexual orientation. Mm-hmm. You may feel the religious aspect.
Yeah. Gender, religion, regional, like where you're from mm-hmm. in the country, educational background, maybe class, economic stratus that you're born in. What else?
So any of the isms, basically, yeah. Right? So let me say this. We can't talk about racism without talking about privilege. And one of the first things I want to do is help us define racism. My friend, well, I don't know her, but in my fantasy world, she's my friend because her name is Ijeoma Oluo. She wrote a book called So You Want to Talk About Race. Igeomaoluo, right? And the reason I call her my friend is she is a mixed race Nigerian woman. I think she was born and raised in Seattle. I see her online all the time. She's active in the circles of talking about race, mm-hmm. but I don't know what her Nigerian connection is, if she knows her Nigerian father. Her name is clearly Igbo. So I just feel a kindred spirit with her. And then she's doing amazing work separate mm-hmm. from the way I feel about her. Mm-hmm. So she says on page 26 of her book, again, So You Want to Talk About Race. That's the name of the book. Probably one of the most telling signs that we have problems talking about race in America is the fact that we can't even agree on what the definition of racism actually is. And she gives two definitions. Racism is any prejudice against someone because of their race, A. Or B, racism is any prejudice against someone because of their race when those views are reinforced by systems of power. And for the purposes of her book, she uses the second definition, that racism is reinforced by systems of power. Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to talking about systems of power, we have to talk about privilege and what mm-hmm. privilege is. Yes. And every time, Jennifer, I talk about privilege in my workshops, even with clients, yes. or just the white community at large, you feel the hair on people's backs rising when they mention the word privilege, right? Yes. And a lot of times the immediate response is defensiveness. And let me introduce our audience to, for those who don't know what privilege is, I'd like to introduce you to my own privilege and how I came to understand my own privilege, mm-hmm. which is an ongoing process. I don't think it's a one-time thing. Mm-hmm. And chip in whenever you want to. Privilege is like, you came to my home today to do this podcast. How many steps did you take to get into my house? Were there steps?
Yes.
And do you remember how many?
3 or 4.
3 or 4? Okay. If you were in a wheelchair, you'd know exactly how many they were.
Yeah.
Because the house was built for the default setting of bipeds, people with 2 legs who can climb stairs. It was not built for people who are in the wheelchair because they're in the minority, they're marginalized. So if I were in a wheelchair and I wanted to rent this house, I would have to install or go look for a place that had a ramp. Mm-hmm. And so this house was built for people that are privileged to be bipeds, right? And that's how our culture works. This culture was built for the white male to be at the center of it. That's why for every dollar the white man makes, a white woman makes 76 cents, and a black man makes 63 cents. And I believe the figure is that a black woman makes 62 cents. So the structure is built for the white man to be at the center of it, so that even if you didn't grow up, quote unquote, privileged, meaning you didn't grow up with money and opportunity, it's still built towards the default of the white male.
So the irony of what you're talking about, and look at myself, and I continually commit to try to wrestle with my privilege and bump up against it, and I have a lot to wrestle with. So I'm a white woman, went to really good schools, come from upper middle class family. So I, and still in 2018, I'm able to kind of walk around in this kind of feeling of this is what everything is like, what everyone experiences, what I experience. But naming how many privileges I have in being heterosexual, able-bodied, cisgender, those are all areas where if I commit to it, I really could bump up against that privilege that creates an illusion for me. Mm-hmm. So there are more opportunities for me to wrestle with it if I really commit to it, because I have all these different levels of privilege.
Right. So I made a controversial statement to Jennifer. I talked about how I don't trust white people who don't wrestle with their privilege. And let me explain what that means. Your privilege is such a default setting. It is privilege creates a blinding bubble that makes you feel safe and secure. And unless you're making some effort to see outside of what that bubble is, going back to our very first podcast, Jennifer, unless you make a concerted effort to come out of that bubble and see the world through a different lens, then I don't trust you. I don't trust that you see me for who I am.
Yes.
I don't trust that you can experience all of who I am. And so what ends up happening is I only get to show you a portion of who I am.
Because someone who doesn't see someone else's other fully or recognize it and validate it, then it's just that person's just an extension of themselves, and they only see that part that they can. And in a way, that's infantilizing. So we were talking earlier about how infants just feel that their needs are automatic. They don't understand that they are an individual entity that's different from their mother, and they just get their needs met magically until the mother. It's called the failure of having their needs met, and then Melanie Klein calls it the depressive state. So realizing that, oh my gosh, my mother's not going to be there every single second for me when I'm hungry or when I need to go to the bathroom or when I need to be comforted and I'm upset. She just can't, she cannot, there's no possible way that she can do that. And when the child's able to recognize that, they're able to see that they are actually their own person, and they may have to start to understand how to get their own needs met, which ties back to our other podcast. But to not wrestle with difference and privilege means that you remain in a state of infantilization, just thinking that the world is there for you to meet your needs whatever second you want them, and that's not the case. Right.
The other thing I'm thinking of that's a really good example of privilege was an article I read today about how the U.S. military is now allowing, the language being allowing, black women to wear their hair naturally. So let's look at this, and I want to give both sides of the argument, because one of the comments on my Facebook wall when I reposted this story was, well, why can't everybody just shave their head and be treated the same? And I don't, just like women should not be treated the same as men for certain things, but then they should be for other things.
Yeah.
You know, like
women
have periods.
Yeah.
They need sanitary stuff.
Right. Trying to equalize.
Trying to equalize is blinding.
Yeah.
It's a form of blinding, because the equalization is based on the male,
power. Yeah.
the power the men have, and is based on them. So like
maintaining status quo.
Doing the buzz cut is getting women to conform to the status quo. So please hear this. It is 2018, and the military is saying that it's okay for women, black women, to have their natural hair, meaning short froze. I don't even know if that includes twists, little dreadlocks, braids, right? Braids. In Africa, I grew up so jealous My hair is very soft. It's like baby hair. So if I braid it, the ends will not stay. I'd have to have big rubber bands. And, back then, rubber bands were all pale, not, nothing black. Right? I'd have to put rubber bands to hold the end of my hair because my hair wouldn't hold braids. Braids is a natural African way of showing up in the world. The military is saying we're allowing. Allowing is a trigger word for me.
Right.
But that's privilege. That's white male privilege. That is just, the military is trying to wrestle with it now. So kudos to them for doing it. I'm disappointed. It's 2018. We're just having this conversation in that arena. I had no idea that was even going on. But that's what privilege looks like. It's toxic. Here's the thing I tell white people about privilege all the time, Jennifer. And maybe you could help me flesh this out. Privilege puts you in a very small bubble. The world is not your oyster if you are living in the peak of your privilege. You don't have diverse viewpoints that are helping you expand your world, that are challenging you, helping you grow, helping you be the very best human you can be when you stay in your little bubble.
So traveling is an antidote to that.
Yeah.
And not just staying at the resorts and the tourist spots, but actually engaging with people who live there, who are part of the culture, and trying to, have conversations and understand. And the other thing that you were talking about, using words that could be triggering, if you, as a white person, if you're in a conversation with someone who's a person of color or someone who's different from you culturally, racially, socially, and they challenge you in a word that you say, one thing you can say is, okay, well, can you give me another word, or can you tell me why that word bothered you?
Sure.
And just ask for clarification. It's not going to kill you, but whatever that word, if it carries extra meaning that you aren't aware of, just stop for a minute and ask for that person to explain why, or to clarify, or to give another word that might be more helpful.
And ouch and oops, those corny kind of things that we do in what are those games you play at meetings to... Icebreakers. Yeah. Saying ouch. Someone says, wait a minute, I don't appreciate you using that word, and you get to say oops or ouch. I did not intend to be offensive. In fact, I'm working on my language. I'd love for you to correct me on that. But, just think of that word allowing. The military now allows. They still hold all the power, and they're merely being gracious by allowing you, giving you permission for your hair to show up in the world the way your DNA uniquely designed it to show up. Why do you allow me to be a full human? Why should anybody give you the power to be a full human being? These are the insidious ways that privilege shows up in the world. Now, Jennifer, I'm big on this. I get in trouble all the time because I tell people, you don't ever have to apologize for your privilege. It is not your fault. You were born how you were born, into what you were born into. We can get into deep spiritual fantasies, really, about... Did you make a decision to manifest into the planet the way you did and all of that? What we do know for sure is you're here the way you're here. You're a white woman. I'm a mixed race person. I'm a mixed race woman. We show up how we show up. I don't think you should apologize, feel guilty.
It's not like I'm beyond hope.
Get into white fragility about... No, you are not beyond help. You're an awesome human being. Look, even you doing this podcast is a form of your wrestling with your privilege, as it is for me. Same thing for me, because the reality is I came to understand my privilege in that a lot of people think I'm Latino, right? So a lot of people look at me and start speaking Spanish. If you want to get on my nerves, do that. I immediately get upset. But it would be very easy to classify me as African American. And the African American community has been the one that has held me close, has identified with me, has loved me, has given me place in this society, and has taken me as part of their own. So I will always have allegiance, alliance, and love, respect, and admiration for the African American community, even though I'm not African American by birth, right? But like one of the things, for instance, we're sitting in, this is a very good way for you to understand how I'm still learning my own privilege. We're sitting in a sunroom that 3 walls of the room are covered by mid-wall to top ceiling blinds. And it is 9 p.m. at night. The blinds are open. If an African American friend of mine comes, I can think of 5 of them. If they come over right now, they're going to fuss at me that why are your blinds open? Don't you know you don't keep your blinds open and the lights on for people to see into your house that you're home? Finally, and I just take it, right? Okay, I'm just ignorant. Maybe I'm not the best housekeeper in the world. I'm lazy. I don't like closing these blinds, right? Until one day, one of them told me, one of my friends, Angela, said, don't you know what a Molotov cocktail is? And I looked at her, I was like, what the hell are you talking about? And she said, growing up, you don't leave your blinds open like this because someone could throw in a bottle of a Molotov cocktail. She said, you are so not black. That's what she told me. I was like, yes, I am. Yes, I am. I'm African black. But things like that I take for granted. I feel safe in the world with my blinds open. Most African Americans, most overwhelming majority of them do not. They wake up in the morning and put in a whole system of checks and balances in place to protect themselves because they go into a world that is offended by their skin color. I don't have that.
I feel like I'm becoming more sensitive about when I'm in public, who's around me, the conversations I have. I went to a movie with a friend of mine at Phipps Plaza the other day. My female friend was white. The bartender, I know all the bartenders at Phipps Plaza, and really lovely people, and the African American bartender was really lovely, friendly. And we were ordering a glass of wine, and she said, I said, can I have a certain brand? And she said, I said the Pinot Grigio. She said, okay, the white or the red? And there was a young African American man standing next to me, and she kind of like was looking across the bar, and I said, the white one, and she didn't hear me, and I repeated it louder, and I said, the white one, cold, and I could tell he kind of just stiffened up and like stepped back because it was like I was emphasizing that word, and I had a feeling, I was just like, I know, and not to say that you can't say white wine.
I know, right?
But at the same time, when you emphasize it a certain way, you repeat it, there is an emphasis on it and people around you, and it just made me feel sensitive to that, knowing that certain words and
triggers,
patterns of speech can be triggers for people. And so I do try to make an extra effort to not to be aware of that and be have a conversation in a way that doesn't emphasize certain that may have an ambiguity about how I say certain things and how I say certain words.
You give me a memory of a coach, a world-renowned coach who recently put together a program, and she called it Lighter. Everybody wants to feel lighter about everything, but she called this program Lighter and ended up using images of different skin tones of black people and not to point out to black people anything about black people, but to say basically to be inclusive. And it really backfired on her because there was insensitivity to what's going on in the world right now, and you saying, oh, you want to be lighter, you want to be you want to embrace lightness over darkness, over dark skin. I'll always be grateful to Barbara Brown Taylor for her book Walking in the Dark, where she's an Episcopal priest who explores that shadow side and she talks about taking walks at night in her farm in North Georgia, and how in the darkness is when you can get quiet enough to hear certain things. So dark is not all bad. We rejuvenate in darkness, and there's value in darkness.
Absolutely.
And psychologically, we need to move away from demonizing any form of blackness or darkness in our lives and to embrace both colors metaphorically and visually as part of all that is good and alive.
Tell your story about the young man in seminary who you were encouraging him to.
Oh my gosh, this wonderful man. One of my classmates in seminary was from a very racist background, and his eyes really opened up in seminary, and he really wanted to serve God. And he was talking to me. He said, Missy Yabo, I just have to ask you this because you're the only person I trust with this. He said, I come from this racist background. This is what we talk about at the dinner table. I never felt that way, but I'm sure it's in me somewhere. What do I do? And I said, well, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to find a black woman on this campus and tell me who she is and why you consider her beautiful. And he said, I'm not attracted to black women. I said, go find you one that you can call beautiful. And he came back to me and was befuddled and was like, but I can't do that. I like blonde, skinny, blue-eyed, blah, blah, blahs. And I said, who taught you that was beautiful? What you gaze upon as beautiful feeds your soul.
Yes.
And so I said, go and find a woman to compliment that has a different skin tone. And I said, look for something to compliment her skin, something. So begin to look for beauty in the odd places among people who you've not been taught are beautiful. Yes. And at the end of the day, he's getting married. He's marrying a wonderful human being. She's a white woman, not blonde, but I think she might be blue-eyed. But he always came back to me and told me that conversation changed his life. Because we talk about it from race, all of those things, but even who you consider beautiful. Another good standard is who do you let teach you? Who are those people on TV that you listen to, that you appreciate their critique of whatever? Are you listening to a variety of people from a variety of perspectives? Who's the Latina person that you like?
Yes.
Who's the black person? Who's the Korean? We're in Atlanta. Do you know how many Koreans are in this city? Hispanics, Koreans.
Vietnamese,
Indians, who are we
Middle
listening
Eastern.
to? The people you let teach you and feed your psyche are important, and you can expend some of your diversity currency there by allowing a diverse group of people into your world. And so my encouragement to you this week is go out, wrestle with your privilege. Don't be ashamed of it. Don't apologize. Wrestle with it. Use it. Speak up with it.
I can't recall the time when I honestly tried to engage in a real conversation like this with people from a different racial background, social, cultural. And I'm sure I stumbled, but I never got the feeling that I was being completely shut down or dismissed or... and allowing, it was just very honest and real, and there was an affirmation on both sides, and an appreciation, and then some learning. So, wanting to learn, but I never got the feeling that, I should never do this again, or that it was wrong. I think there was more, it was more appreciation than I realized.
Yeah.
I thought that I would get.
Yeah. Like, there's one more thing I wanted to say. I have a white friend in Oklahoma who adopted a little black girl, and she sent me a text message saying, her hair's getting out of control. I don't know what to do. And I said, you carry your happy tail into a black hair salon and you say, hi, and they're going to stare at you and look at you like you're crazy. And you're going to say, listen, I adopted this little girl and I don't want to screw up her hair. I need help. What is it going to take? I don't know what I'm doing, and I want to learn. And she said that was exactly what she did. And like the whole salon just broke out into applause.
Oh my God, I love that.
So those moms that have, to me, adopting a black child is wrestling with your privilege, right? Because you're making a decision to face some challenges. Even if you came from the wrong place, even if you felt you were a savior when you did it, because sometimes, our motives can be both things. We're not I don't mean to demonize anybody, but sometimes you feel like you're rescuing someone or whatever. But black hair care, that's a whole big thing. Make sure you're getting that part right. Anyway, I hope this was informative for you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Good night.
Bye.